I'm Dr. Sean Baker. I've been doing carnivore for 7 years. I wrote the book, The Carnivore Diet. I am an orthopedic surgeon by training, but these days I basically spend pretty much all my time taking care of and interacting with carnivore people. So I have a lot of insight and perspective on that stuff.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Bright. I'm an osteopath and naturopath. I live in Italy, but I have been a carnivore since 2016 when I went into menopause, and I wrote a book called Good Fat is Good for Women Menopause to address, to basically explain to women that the symptoms associated with menopause are not caused by menopause, but actually are caused by endocrine issues, other endocrine issues like adrenal function. So that's my specialty.
And good morning. My name is Dr. Rob Kiltz. I'm a fertility physician and here to share ideas of health and wellness that I've learned from people like you, and I'm inspired to share more each and every day. So thank you for having me today.
Hi, I am Kevin Stock. I am a dentist, and I've been eating a carnivore diet for 6 or 7 years. So Lisa.
Okay. Dr. Lisa Wiedemann. Thank you. I have been carnivore since 2009, 14 and almost half years now. And my passion really has been to come into this community because people were questioning, is this really sustainable? Okay, it's good now, but is this real? This is not sustainable. I'm like, yes it is. And I feel like I'm here to hopefully motivate and inspire people to really figure out for themselves just how nutritious and amazing this way of eating is.
All right, let's get started with the first question.
Hi, good morning. My question is about gluconeogenesis. So some carnivores are finding that their A1C goes up, their morning glucoses go up. So how can we know if we're getting too much protein? Should we follow those numbers, or should we follow our creatinine and BUN? What should we do to assess how much protein we actually need to avoid the gluconeogenesis?
Well, that's a great topic. Well, you're not going to avoid gluconeogenesis. It's happening regardless. It happens to everybody, no matter what. So you're not going to avoid it. Now, a couple things that I will tell you that one, a lot of us experience relatively higher morning glucoses. A lot of times because we're not actually fasting. You know, when we consume a large meat-based meal, it takes a long time to make its way through our digestive tract. So we're still in a postprandial state, even 10, 12 hours afterwards, so maybe 18 hours before you get an actual fasting number in that regard. Sometimes we see hemoglobin A1Cs rise, but it doesn't correlate with CGM data. I see a lot of that. I see people where their CGM numbers are really good, but their A1C is not, is sort of discordant from that. And so there's the thought that red cells are living longer, and therefore the hemoglobin A1C is artificially inflated. I think that, I am, and there's other people that are more fat-centric. I am certainly more protein-centric. I think we should couple all this stuff with resistance training. I think being stronger is always going to be beneficial, and I think that's something that is important. A lot of the early, it's not so much gluconeogenesis, but it's stimulation of glucagon that we see. We know protein will stimulate glucagon. And if you have some underlying insulin resistance or insulin deficiency, so to speak, where there's a imbalance between that, you may be glucagon dominant. And so that early peak after a meal, there's some studies that suggest 75 grams of protein is enough to sort of spike glucose, I suppose. And honestly, we don't know that spiking glucose in the context of many things is actually that always harmful to us. Exercise. When I exercise very heavily, my glucose goes up every time, pretty routinely. So I don't think we have it all wired in there. I look at, I think what's going on with our overall body composition, are we getting leaner, are we getting stronger, as a good thing. And that's how I kind of judge, if we're getting adequate protein. Because I think more often than not, most people suffer from, not enough protein, I think, and you need to couple it with those types of things. That's my perspective on that. I'll let Elizabeth talk.
Okay, well, I would say that, of course, your insulin goes up, your glucose will spike when you're exercising, and I do think that the morning glucose will also be higher because during the night you're not eating, and you need to have gluconeogenesis in order for you to not go into hypoglycemia while you're sleeping. So I wouldn't worry too much about morning glucose, and postprandial is a more important marker for me.
And I think that we're maybe measuring too much, and add more fat to the diet and eat less frequently. And glucose, by the way, is another sugar that's for glycosylation, which is important for all of our functions in our body. So maybe we're too worried about our glucose levels and we have to be less concerned, but I think the exercise is critical, I think fasting is critical, and I think adding more fat is critical. So we focus too much on protein. Proteins break down to amino acids, they're glucogenic and ketogenic, but they must be converted to fat in the liver, and so you're gonna have a rise in insulin because that's completely normal at our body's function.
I think we go to the next question.
Yeah, thank you. Let's go move to the next question.
Good morning. I know the thyroid is really important, but what about people who do not have a thyroid anymore? Something better than Synthroid? And how does it affect the rest of your system?
I'm sorry, the rest of your systems?
Yeah.
Not having a thyroid?
Right.
You have to absolutely have thyroid hormone. It's essential. So you'll have to have. I'm sorry. So you have to have thyroid hormone, so it has to be supplemented.
So is there something better than Synthroid?
Yes, natural desiccated thyroid,
Okay.
porcine powder thyroid, which unfortunately is frowned upon by the medical establishment. But that will give you the same ratio. Pig thyroid has the same, almost identical ratio of hormone production as human thyroid. So you want to avoid bovine thyroid, which has incredibly high amounts of T4, not the same ratio.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, and thank you guys for all doing this. This is amazing. Now, I think all of us in the room, and especially all of you, are anti-establishment when it comes to what we're doing, because we're against the meds, right? So now they're talking about the thing that is starting to become a conversation for us, which is putting mRNA in our meats. So can somebody up there please speak to how do we feel safe and secure? We know that we can go to our local farmers, but that's not everybody. And a lot of people in Miami, Florida, don't have a local farmer that they know about. So can you all please speak to how we know what we're eating is not full of that? And thank you guys. And your Ferrari is your body is the best video, and everybody in this room better watch that. I love it. Thank you, Dr. Gills.
Yeah, I get a lot of questions about this, and honestly, I guess there's some indication that mRNA vaccines have been used in some of the pig production in the U.S. It's not been introduced in the cattle population as of yet. They've talked about it. In other countries, they've talked about it. What they're going to use it for. I'm not sure yet. I mean, they're talking about using mRNA, replacing all the vaccines that we have now, like a lot of the childhood vaccines with mRNA technology. So they're driving forward on this stuff. And so, part of it has to do with the labeling laws. We don't even know what country our food comes from now. That's one of the reasons the MCOOL laws being repealed. A lot of people will talk about getting that reinstated. I think it was removed during the Obama administration, where we used to know where our food came from. Now we're not compelled to do that. Again, whether it's actually going to be a problem for us as humans is unknown. I think that if a cow is vaccinated with an mRNA vaccine for bovine respiratory virus or something along those lines, does it actually affect the meat in a way? Potentially. Now, what happens when it's cooked? What happens when it enters our digestive tract, which has incredibly powerful gastric pH? Is it neutralized? My suspicion is most likely it is. But a lot of ranchers have made statements that they don't plan to use this technology. So I think the best thing you do, obviously, if you know a rancher, that's the ideal situation. to know what's going in there. I'm not as worried about it as some other people might be. I suspect most vaccines are not oral. There's an oral polio vaccine, but they have to be coated, to protect them from our gastric pH. So I think probably our gut's going to kill almost all of it, if not all of it. But we'll have to see. It's really unknown.
I guess the only thing I would add to that is, and this is kind of a general comment, is you have to do the best you can with what you have. So for example, I do eat most of my meat from a local farmer. However, I'm traveling this weekend, and I was having eggs at the hotel this morning. I don't know what that was cooked in. But, you do the best you can with what you're given. So that's the only thing I'd add to that.
All right, let's do the next question.
Hi. What advice would you give to a young person that's had ulcerative colitis for 10 years, and when they try keto or carnivore, after a few days, they go into a flare?
I would say fasting is the first thing to start with, because the glycobiome, the glycocalyx is damaged in the gut, and they need to fast in order to heal that first. Then they can start on bone broth would be good, and then meat slowly, and maybe try a different meat potentially. But it does work. I suffered from all of that, and it healed. But fasting, I think, is one of the most important things that we're not jumping into. And there's a lot out there. Look at Mindy Peltz's book. There's a lot of information there.
He does do well on the fasting mimicking diet for 5 days. Gets him out of a flare mostly.
Did you say it heals the flare? Or
Well, it helps him get out of it some.
yeah, and it may take months to really heal the gut. I mean, it's the most sensitive organ system of our body, and we're trashing it by putting in willy-nilly anything, and especially deadly plants.
Thank you.
I would also suggest just looking into root cause. Have him look into something like chronic inflammatory response syndrome and see what's causing the ulcerative colitis.
Hi there. If someone's following a carnivore diet and they find that they're not losing weight or even gaining weight, could that just come down to overeating or eating too much fat or maybe something else? And I guess what could they do about that?
Well, you really have to think about the decades of time of eating garbage and how long your body has developed insulin resistance. And patience is really part of that. You have to really wait until your hormones regulate, and then actually really pay attention to I know there's a lot of conflicting information, fast, don't fast, macro this, that, but you have to really try to figure out for yourself what is going to start working, and try doing an OMAD, and then try doing a 2MAD, the twice a day, and try figuring out what are your true hunger signals, because I'm going to say from my experience, just from years of carb and sugar addiction and binge eating disorder, I don't have that shut off. I want to eat, and I see the food, and I'm realizing a lot of times it's too much. You don't need that much, but you certainly have to make sure you're eating enough protein, eating enough fat. That's subjective, right? What is enough? And so therein lies all the confusion. But part of it, I think the biggest part, just coming new into this, you can't have 40 years of eating, let's just call it, treating our bodies like a trash can, and then expect everything to regulate and work. But it's hard. You see Transformation Tuesdays, and everybody's, showing the pictures of the ones that are dropping weight, and it gets frustrating, but stick with it and be patient.
And I agree. I think that for a lot of people, there is this healing phase initially, and a lot of times you get through that, and your body composition is the light at the end of the tunnel. And anecdotally, for my experience, for example, right now I'm doing a carnivore diet and to purposely gain weight. I'm just barely pushing my appetite a little bit, and I'm up 20 pounds in the last 9 months. But before that, I was very lean, 20 pounds lighter, without being hungry. So I think some of this has to do like what you said, like how much you're eating, it will change. How much you eat will change whether you're going to gain weight or lose weight. But I think, like Lisa said, importantly, that a lot of people need to go through a healing phase. And after that phase, sometimes there's various strategies, like she was alluding to. You can do some kind of fasting strategies, other strategies to, I like to say, force the fat off. And so that can be part of the strategy as well. But I think a lot of people need to get through that first phase initially.
We're meant to be fat, not skinny. Millions of years of evolution was famine, not feast. And so we're bucking the system. That's part of the challenge. I always say, love your body as it is, and as you go carnivore and you eat less, because I think sometimes we push too much food on us. That's why I think the OMAD is one of the best things you can do. And then resistance exercise, I know Sean really talks about that a lot. It's very important. And just get out and move and go for a walk. But love your body, recognize that the fat's not the cause of disease. It's a sign of the reason we're all sick, which is basically a plant-based diet.
As a counter to that, there's a lot of us who can't. I used to eat one meal a day because I could eat enough in one meal, and then over time I couldn't eat that much anymore, and then I started under eating. So then you're gonna have, sometimes your weight can stall simply because you're not eating enough, and your body's just starting to slow down because you're not giving it enough food, right? So there's this balance of like, am I not eating enough or too much? But if you've tried those things, if you've made the adjustment and been consistent, there may be some other underlying root cause healing that needs to happen that's not diet related and that your diet can't fix. The diet can fix a lot. We've all been healed in a lot of ways by the diet, but there also might be something underneath of that that needs to be addressed.
Thank you.
Good morning. I was just diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis a year and a half ago, and I was just told, hey, here's your meds, methotrexate, Humira, prednisone, and all that stuff. And about 2 months ago, I just kind of heard about the carnivore diet, and hey, maybe there's a fix there, not just taking your meds and you deal with it for the rest of your life. So just started carnivore about 3 weeks ago. And what is that window that y'all have seen people 30 days, 60, 90, or more?
That's it's a good question, and I have definitely seen a lot of people with rheumatoid arthritis put it into remission, come off meds. So there's some optimism for that. I got survey data on about 12,000 people doing the diet. It seems like 3 months is a reasonable inflection point for most people. A lot of people will notice improvements very, very early, but I think if you stick it out for 3 months, and it may involve, with autoimmune diseases, sometimes you have to be very strict. I mean, it's, you can't do the artificial sweeteners and you can't have the seasonings, and you've got to be, pretty restrictive in what you do. And because, there's something going on. I mean, I'll talk about it in my talk. There's a recent study that shows that actually fiber and its interaction with the gut microbiome actually worsens rheumatoid arthritis. And so I think 3 months is a minimum I'd look at. It might take longer, depending on I don't know how severe it is. If you're early on, you probably don't have any deformity or anything like that. It's probably just pain and functional limitations. So the good news is there's a good chance you can get a full recovery from that. But, give it 3 months.
Okay. All right. Thanks for your time. Appreciate y'all.
Thank you all for your work. We follow each of you. My husband and I have been on a 95% carnivore diet for more than a year, but our main focus is being in ketosis. So we've noticed when we do have too much protein, that we'll be out of ketosis. So I've been curious, as I follow you guys, how many of you actually measure your ketones? And if you do, what do you recommend to everyone here that's, trying to stay carnivore, but also be in, a high level of ketosis?
What I immediately think of when I heard that question is your main priority was to be in ketosis.
Right.
But my follow-up question would be like, why?
Disease prevention, neurological.
So you're assuming like if you're not in deep ketosis, you're going to have greater risk of a certain disease?
Our assumption is based off of studies that the disease specifically is Huntington's disease. So there was a study that was done by Dr. Phillips. I don't know. He was on Dr. Baker's show.
Yes, Stuart Phillips.
Showing that your brain energy will increase. There's glucose hypometabolism, and Huntington's the same as Alzheimer's and other diseases. And so ketosis is the main focus. Without the ketones, how would the brain be fueled is our concern.
Okay, and when we talked a little about gluconeogenesis,
Yes.
gluconeogenesis already. So for I think a lot of people, ketosis is very important. Like someone with epilepsy, or like you're
Right,
alluding to, perhaps
exactly.
your personal situation, where a deeper level of ketosis is important. And in that case, I would just go for fattier cuts of meat. Perhaps add tallow, butter, whatever
Right.
you tolerate, and you can keep your track of. Make sure you're in deep ketosis, because you definitely can do it that way.
Right.
Now, eating a regular carnivore diet, I'm kind of more like Dr. Sean Baker. A
More
little higher
protein.
on the protein,
Okay.
probably 35%, roughly, maybe up to 40% is not uncommon
Okay.
on a daily basis. So I'm probably in lower levels of ketosis, but I'm certainly at least going in and out of various depths of nutritional ketosis.
Do
But-
any of you measure?
Yeah, but
the
I do not.
ketones?
I don't measure.
I do measure at times. I use measurement as a way of trying to understand more about my body and about what I eat and when I eat. There's a lot of work, Thomas Seyfried, with cancer, that cancer cells cannot survive on ketones, and for prevention and treatment, there's that thought process with the ketosis. So I am paying attention to tracking my macros just to see what percentage of fat versus protein gets me into what level of ketosis. So in general, over 0.5 is considered, ketosis. And for different reasons, such as the epilepsy, the cancer, you might really need to and want to push it up higher. But in general, I know there's a tendency for us to get hung up on numbers, because that's what we can grasp onto. That's like concrete. Okay, I pricked my finger, this is the number. You got to remember, you could take 2 different meters and put it into the same droplet of blood and get 2 different readings. So why are we so stuck on numbers? And the stress of it, whether it's the mRNA in the meat or the ketosis or how much protein, how much fat, we gotta back up and also say, you know what, there is something to be said about not stressing out over all these markers and numbers all the time. Yes, can use them as tools. Yes, it's great information, but we don't want to stress too much, because stress is not good for our body either.
True.
From an anecdotal, you don't ever track them ever, right? Do you? No. I do, just because it's something that comes up a lot and ask. And also, I just get curious. It's kind of, sometimes it's motivating for me, depending on, if I'm feeling really snacky, I'll check my ketones and be like, you're not hungry. Like, this isn't good motivation. But if I'm eating 2 meals a day, I do eat probably heavier protein, especially for women. I eat a lot of protein. And I typically am a 0.5, 0.4, and then because my glucose tends to be like in the low 90s, it'll say on the meter, like, you're not in ketosis sometimes, right? And that's pretty regular. If I do a fast, 36 to 48 hours, that will immediately pop up to about a 1.5, right? And it'll stay there. And then for a couple days afterwards, my baseline ketones will just stay slightly higher, and then they'll eventually go back down. So I don't necessarily force it that way because of I don't have that reason.
Right.
But it's just interesting for me to see, if I wanted to do a fast, it'll go up, and then it can stay slightly elevated for the next week or so.
Right. Okay, thank you so much.
Well, I wanted
No,
to.
please.
I don't measure, because I know that I'm in ketosis because of the amount of fat I eat. I eat this way because my mother had Alzheimer's, and that's exactly why I eat this way. So, based on, I measured initially, and I do have some patients measure initially, but usually the quantity, the first month of my program is very high fat, 80-20. So I know they're in ketosis, and I know I'm in ketosis. So, and I do think that 0.5. If you're in low ketosis after a fatty meal, I think it's okay.
So you just add more fat?
I just add more fat,
Okay.
yeah.
Focus on the fat. That's the most important thing. Remember, plant sugars are the cause of all disease.
Right.
And so if you don't eat plants, you don't get the sugars, you don't get the glycation, which is the cause of all the disease we're talking about.
Thank you very much.
Morning, everyone. My question's on the fasting part. I've been in carnivore for 6 months now. When I fasted, I dropped weight. I went no fasting for first 2 months. Then I started doing intermittent fasting. I dropped all the weight I wanted to drop. But is fasting mainly for weight loss, or is there another reason behind it?
I think fasting is one of the healthiest things we can do because it reduces the exposure of our gut to a high plant-based or high protein diet. And if you haven't looked up protein poisoning or rabbit starvation, you should look at that. So I think that the fasting allows the glycocalyx to heal, which again, it reduces leaky gut or eliminates it, which is, I think, critical for our body. And it keeps our overall glucose levels. Remember, proteins convert to sugars in the liver, and if the liver isn't capable of converting that to fat fast enough, we have an increase in our sugar levels, which can be damaging also to the rest of our cells of our body. So fasting is one of the most important. It's an ancient spiritual practice. We've all been doing it in our human civilization for thousands of years. So I think it's something to work on a more regular basis.
I tend to disagree for women, especially women who've been yo-yo dieting for decades, that we know that fasting also increases adrenaline, and it can tax adrenal issues. And if you are a woman trying to ensure that your hormones are balanced, I think that fasting can not be a good idea.
I'm just going to add one thing, if I may, because as a fertility doctor and seeing so many women suffering from things like hyperemesis, early pregnancy, one of the things that is healing is not to eat, because your baby is saying, don't put those poisons in my body so I can gestate and grow. And if you look at many animals, they don't eat for months and months and months, and they gestate and do quite well. So I think that there's some conflicting information we're not always sure about, but I still think that it's something that even for women, they can fast a little bit more, because 3 to 6 meals a day is deadly. You know, if you're going to do one meal, a snack, 2 meals maybe, but it's probably more than we need.
Hi, I'm 19 years post gastric bypass, and I have a really hard time having that amount of food, and I really want to go carnivore. But when I have that amount of protein and fat, I really can't take in more than about 2 to 3 ounces at a time, and then I feel very nauseated. So I'm just wondering if you have any advice or resources.
Well, so my question is, when you're saying you can't take in more than 2 to, so if you're not carnivore, what are you taking in? Plants? And then that's okay?
It seems like the carbs, simple carbs in my whole life, right? I haven't been doing this. They digest very quickly and go through, so then I can hold more food. So it's not like I'm getting bad stuff. But when I want to get the quality protein and the quality fats, they don't go through my system as easily.
Yeah, make sure the fats that you're eating are solid and not rendered liquid, because that tends to really have an effect, a negative effect on a lot of people in digesting it. The more rare-ish, raw-ish the meat, usually the more easily digested. Not that I'm giving advice here on that. But, and for you in your situation, I'm not exactly sure what type of surgery, but maybe you need 3 or 4 smaller, meat-based meals.
Sorry, yeah. Usually, well, my experience of studies, a lot of studies have shown that people who've had gastric bypasses have also, that it stretches, and it may not necessarily be the fact that the area is too small for you to put the food in, but you may not have the digestive mechanics to break it down, which often happens. You may not have enough hydrochloric acid, you may not have enough vasoactive peptide, you may not have enough of the enzymes. So maybe adding some digestive mechanics, which certainly happens in a hypothyroid gut, the absence of those mechanics, maybe you need to supplement just in this case. But definitely also smaller meals will definitely help.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you for being here and letting us ask the questions. 11 and a half months ago, I started my health journey, and at that point, I was a 2-year COVID survivor. Now, at 3 years, I'm a COVID thriver, and I'm trying, but I'm completely out of my comfort zone even being out here in public with all these people. But carnivore has been part of my journey in the last 11 and a half months. It's been intermittent fasting, keto, carnivore, and I'm working with a coach. However, I don't have a gallbladder. And so it seems to be my sweet spot is 11 days. On the 12th day, my lack of a gallbladder kicks in. And what are y'all's recommendations to kind of mitigate the issues with that?
Yeah, well, we have a lot of people that are post cholecystectomy that do well on either ketogenics or carnivore diets. And, the concern is, what is the function of the gallbladder? It's to secrete bile, store and secrete bile into the duodenum as we are in response to fat in the meal to help emulsify the fat. And, chronically after a gallbladder, what we see is a common bile duct will often expand. You'll have a little bit of a reservoir. When cholecystokinin is released, then the sphincter vodi will open up, and you'll still get a bolus of bile in there. I mean, you still have bile, your liver's still making bile. And so initially, depending what your diet has been traditionally, if you're not used to eating a higher fat diet, that may be still limited. And so in the beginning, you might have to eat smaller meals. Be concerned about how much fat you have per meal. And so instead of, like, I can do very well on 2 meals a day and often 1 meal a day, but many people, like the person with gastric bypass, I mean, you might have to eat 4 times a day. And then again, rendered fat, as Dr. Bright pointed out, can be particularly problematic because it's, normally when we have fat bound to protein in a matrix like a steak, the stomach's going to spend 3-4 hours churning it and breaking it down. It's going to be slowly released. But when you have the rendered fat, it's liquid. It goes right through us, and so it overwhelms our capacity. So you have to figure out, one, what your energy requirements are for the day. How much, like, let's say I need, just arbitrarily, you need 150 grams of fat a day. That's about 1,350 calories. If you know that, and you need 150 grams, but you only tolerate 50 grams per meal, then you got to eat 3 times. And you just do the calculation and figure out where you're at, and then just be mindful that rendered fat is more likely to trigger us. So butter, tallow, bacon grease, hamburger grease, things like that. So you just have to be mindful about that. So if you can afford it, well-marbled meat or different ways to get that sort of matrix-bound fat is probably a better solution.
Well, I'm on grass-fed, grass-finished beef. I've made that conversion over. And carnivore is the only, when I'm doing like a 30 or 40-day carnivore diet, that's the only time that the gallbladder kicks in. When I'm just low carb, like, 5 to 13 grams of carbs a day, I don't seem to have the issue. But I really feel fabulous when I'm on the carnivore, and I just want to kind of do that more in my mix. So thank you, I appreciate that.
We need a lot of digestive mechanics to break down protein and fat. That basically carbohydrates are easy to digest because once they hit your tongue, the amylase in your tongue is basically, your saliva has everything it needs to break down the carbohydrates. So we think it seems like we digest them better, but they're inflammatory. So you just have to look to your digestive mechanics.
Thank you.
Hi. I've been mostly low carb for about 35 years since Dr. Eads wrote his first book. And had kind of a shock a month or so ago. I was a world-class athlete till I was 40. I'm 68 now. My blood pressure is like 100 over 60. I had a CAC score of 290. And I'm just wondering, is there a way of reversing the calcification? Or is it not a bad thing? Or I thought it was pretty darn healthy. I still ride a bicycle 40 miles when I jump on it. And any comments on that?
Well, I'll just jump in to start. Low carb, I think you can do a good low carb diet and you can do a not so good low carb diet.
I should say I've been carnivore for a year and OMAD for about a year. So.
And yeah, I think the CAC score is not really going to be reflective of 1 year of a diet, but more so the previous 3 decades. Yeah. So I'm not saying that your diet was off those previous 3 decades, but there could be a lot of, I'll say, nuance in the diet that could have had those effects as well.
Right. Reversing it, is that a possibility, or do you know?
Yep, I mean, I've personally seen anecdotes of people reversing CAC scores.
Yeah, I mean, it is, we have seen, again, it's anecdotal. There's some evidence is that there's some protocols for that. Like Kevin said, that 200 plus CAC score was probably a result of many decades of what's going on. You said you're a world-class athlete. We see some athletes, particularly endurance athletes, that actually surprisingly have higher cardiovascular disease burden than you'd expect based on their athletic profile. And so, I think the goal, if you talk to guys like Ira Cummins and some of the other people, Dr. Agatston, it's lack of progression. So if if you're 60, you said 68, if you check it 3 years from now and it's unchanged, then that's generally considered just as good. The nice thing about calcified plaque is it's stable. It's not going anywhere. It's not likely to cause a cardiac event. However, high CAC burdens are associated with soft plaque, and so it may be beneficial to find out if you've got a significant amount of that, or if it's stabilized, or if it's all been bound within the a calcified matrix, then it's less likely to be a problem. But low carb, certain vitamin supplements, vitamin D, vitamin K, and some of the other things have been used to at least theoretically reverse this.
If I could make a comment real quick. We listened to Dr. Hussey yesterday, answered my questions probably in his book, but everybody here should get his book, because I started it last night. I put it down at 1 o'clock this morning, and I didn't want to put it down then. It's a great book. Thank you very much. Dr. Hussey on the heart.
Good morning. What advice do you have for people who are carrying 1 or possibly 2 copies of the APOE4 gene and are told to eat less meat and less saturated fat?
Don't believe it.
I agree with you.
I concur.
No, I think that you look at guys like Dale Bredesen, who is doing a lot of the research on dealing with Alzheimer's disease. He's putting a lot of people on ketogenic diets, and he's still kind of ambivalent on saturated fat. So he's an actual researcher that studies this stuff. But I think the bigger thing to worry about is probably insulin resistance, and I think that's probably going to be the bigger driver of Alzheimer's disease. And so, again, we see a lot of these conditional variables. Some people would argue ApoB or LDL cholesterol is a conditional variable. And so I think, if you put yourself in a situation where, you have this higher genetic predisposition and maybe saturated fat is a factor, but it may be conditional upon being insulin resistant and having all these other issues there. So staying lean, staying active, staying physically fit, being highly insulin sensitive. I think that's probably, in my view, a better thing to focus on than whether you're eating saturated fat or not. Because, as human beings, outside of fantasy world, we've existed on saturated fat for all of our, time on Earth as a species. So I think it's probably, avoiding that stuff. And, what I saw pretty consistently with dementia patients is they have tremendous cravings for highly refined carbohydrates and sugar because their brain just does not, just can't get energy, and so they just gobble down cakes and cookies all the time, and so I think that's what's driving the underlying pathophysiology here. And I think the more we see that, we've heard type 3 diabetes and so on and so forth. So I think it's probably the most important thing is to avoid that.
Our body burns fat. That's it. Fat is the fuel, not sugar. And so we're afraid of fat because the story is you need to be afraid of fat. And so modern medicine has not had any one test that's going to predict any diseases of any significance. We know your family history, we can predict that reasonably well, but our ability to do a CAC score or genetic studies, and if you look at Thomas Seyfried's book or Bruce Lipton's book on biology of belief, but basically the environment is the cause of disease, and the environment that we've been recommending as physicians is a plant-based, low animal fat diet, and we're all getting fat. Well, how's that happening? It's because you must make fat out of amino acids and sugars in the liver. And insulin resistance, by the way, is secondary to liver damage, which requires insulin to convert fats, sugars and amino acids to fat. So again, modern medicine hasn't been able to predict any diseases of any significance or when you're going to die.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for being here and for answering our questions. I'm 5 months into the carnivore journey, lifestyle, and there are people in my life, also known as spouse, who are happy with what they're seeing. I've lost some weight, I feel good energy, and the question is about longevity, and it's, are you doing a trade-off? You feel good, you have this muscle building, all of these good effects of carnivore. I'm sure you guys get this question a lot, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on any perceived concern about a trade-off between the benefits of carnivore in terms of, the things that we all know, and then the concern about, are you going to pay for that with decreased longevity?
That's a great racket to be in, the longevity guru racket, because you don't have to have a money back guarantee. No one knows if you're right or wrong. I mean it really is. When I look at these guys, and some of them are David Sinclair, these other guys that talk about this stuff, and honestly, I don't see 120-year-olds walking around looking jacked and tan. So I don't know, and I don't think anybody realistically knows the answer to that. And what I would say is, we know that strength is correlated with longevity. We know that absence of disease is correlated with longevity. I think focusing on health span and quality of life is all I'm willing to say, because I don't know the answer to that. I don't think anybody really does. And so I think it's it becomes intuitively obvious. 'Cause I get this question a lot of time. I feel great. It's the best I've felt in decades. I'm no longer suicidally depressed or bedbound, and their quality of life goes up so much. And somebody says, well, you've increased your risk for heart disease by 20 or 25%. And almost without exception, every single one of those persons says, I don't really care because I feel so much better. And I think that's an important concept. And so I think that anybody that tells you that, you're saying, what are you basing this on? And all the science that they talk about for longevity is incredibly just weak science. And so I don't worry about it. You can worry about all this time and then walk out and get hit by a bus. And so it's like, what the hell is that about? So anyway.
I was just going to add, because I love that question, because you're like, I lost all this weight, I feel great, I'm sleeping better, my whole life is better, but somehow we correlate that with, but this is probably bad for me long term. To me, it doesn't add up, so it's like, I should go back to that other diet where I'm fat and tired and feel terrible, because that's probably going to make me live a real long time. It's an interesting perspective.
The average age of a human in America has dropped on the advice of the doctors in America.
I just want to add to that. If you're feeling great and you set a goal, I'm going to start climbing mountains, you have nobody cared when you were eating ice cream and donuts and cookies about your longevity. They weren't harping on the fact that, oh, that's great, enjoy that junk now, but you're going to kick off earlier, right? Nobody cares. Nobody's making comment about that. So now all of a sudden we're eating this nutrient-dense way that is fueling total cognitive dissonance in all our friends, family, and loved ones, right? But I don't care. I don't care if you think I'm going to die earlier. I feel amazing.
A related follow-up. It seems like a lot of long-term carnivores, and the discussions that I hear are people who don't tolerate plants, and they will, have some sort of reactions. What about someone who does? If someone can eat vegetables without reacting to them, why would you say that they shouldn't?
Because they're not nutritious. And they are full of anti-nutrients, and they will prevent you from absorbing the actual nutrients you need from the nutritious food, which is meat and fat.
Does anyone know of anyone that it's died and they were healthy? It's because the plants are silently killing you and you don't know it. And I've seen it too often. And so people say to me all the time, gee, doc, I'm infertile, but I'm healthy. Well, you're not healthy because something silently is getting you. You know of no one that has an anaphylactic reaction to ribeye steak. It's the plants. And again, we say some are healthy, but we have no real basis on that because we like them. Just like we might like alcohol or cookies or candy or even marijuana today. It's deadly for us.
I think if you want to eat some asparagus, then eat some asparagus. Like, I think that there's the argument of the hormetic effect, and some things are fine. Like, I agree having massive amounts of vegetables might prevent you from absorbing nutritious meat, and be aware of that. But if it's like, I eat a pickle occasionally, right? It's like, we have to live this life. You have to be able to stick to what you're doing. And if you have to live in such a rigid set of foods that it's just not, like, you're not going to be able to stick to it, and then you go back to doing whatever it is you were doing before because this isn't actually like workable in your life, then don't do it. Like, don't put yourself in this tiny little box. Figure out what's making you healthy, what's actually causing you inflammation. There's certain foods I will never eat again because it either causes me inflammation, digestive issues, or it causes me to go off the rails and have a sugar binge. So those I keep out of my diet completely. But if like there's some kind of pickle and a seasoning in something, like I'm not that stressed about it. Like we've also said this, you can't stress about every little tiny thing all the time and obsess about it. I can't have any carbs or sugar because I know that will cause me massive problems. One tiny bite is a big deal. But if my daughter doesn't eat the tops of her asparagus and I eat a couple, it's gonna be okay.
So my question is not from myself personally, but I believe that there are probably a lot of people in this room and in our families, loved ones, friends, that are type 2 diabetics, my mother included. And so most recently she told me that she's been losing a little weight and that her doctor gave her this pill that helps her flush the sugar out. And I said, why didn't your doctor just tell you not to eat the sugar then, right? But so what my question is here for you guys is, what advice do you have for people that are, say, type 2 diabetic in working with a nutritionist, in working with their doctor to try to truly get off the meds, whether it's keto or carnivore, and some resources for people? Because I mean, support groups are great and they're available with all of you guys, and that's wonderful, but in practical daily life, like finding a doctor or a nutritionist that's going to actually work with you instead of against you, I think is really critical. So I'm going to back away, and I appreciate you guys.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a very common scenario, and I think if you look at the American College of Physicians' goal for type 2 diabetics, they want a hemoglobin A1C between 7 and 8, which is completely unacceptable. I think the goal should be normal. I mean, I think diabetics, whether type 1 or type 2, should have completely normal hemoglobin A1C. I mean, I think that's within the realm of possibility, and that should be the goal. Because if we don't do that, we're setting up for all kinds of complications, blindness, amputations, renal failure, on and on and on. So it requires a comprehensive approach, and a low carbohydrate diet of some sort. I think a carnivore diet is probably, quite honestly, quite wonderful for this. I will say that our company Rivera, which we'll stand up in the next few months, will have physicians that exactly do that. They will not be giving you.
Right?
What's that?
And references.
And what?
Revero.com has a lot of references.
Yeah, we've got a lot of that stuff. So we will be able to provide physicians that are actually on board with this whole approach. So I'm super excited to be part of that. But I mean, this is something that the way we treat diabetes in this country is almost literally criminal, and I think it has to change. And so we're going to be part of that.
My sister Marianne died of diabetes. She's had it since age 4, and I'm inspired by that every single day. But basically, you go to the Keto Carnivore coaches, and you will find the information. And what Sean's doing and many others on this panel, and so many people here are doing, is sharing an idea that you Google from the American Diabetic Association or the American College of OBGYN, and the recommendations are plants, which are sugars, and unfortunately it's not working, and it's turning so many lives around by keto and carnivore. So coaches are what you need today.
I just want to add, as an eye doctor, and I have a diabetic patient in the chair who I've diagnosed, you have some bleeding in your eye. I show them a picture of the blood in the back of their eye, and I explain, you can totally reverse your diabetes. Oh no, I was told I'm going to have this for the rest of my life. Au contraire, not if you do something about it. And then they go, what do I have to do, doc? And I explain, going against standard of care, this carnivore way of eating. Oh, I can't do that, I'm Italian, I gotta eat pasta and bread. And my doctor says, my A1C is doing great. So the part of the difficulty is getting people to actually empower themselves to want to heal and want to get better, and give them the knowledge that they can. And then it's not always easy finding that right low-carb physician. Dietitians are typically the worst because they're telling you how many carbs to eat, and then you just take this much insulin, and people think that's okay. Give me the pill to make this go away. And so really and I'm going to go from my experience. My parents, both type 2 diabetic. For the past 14 years, I've been trying to sing the carnivore song to them. And again, it's very difficult. I say you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him carnivore.
Hello again. For the goal of building muscle, how important is it to split up your high protein meals? Because I've kind of heard back and forth, like you can only utilize so much protein at a single time, but then on the other hand, it's obviously not good to be eating throughout the day, or it seems like the shorter your eating window, the better. I mean, if you can get if you can put 2 pounds of steak down at a time, is it one and done, that simple, or should you split it up? How much does that matter? Or where's the balance, I guess?
I think specifically speaking in the muscle building context, 2 meals is better than 1, 3 is better than 2, and perhaps even 4 is better than 3, but it gets a diminishing returns the more you would add. 5 would be the maximum, simply because of more of a muscle protein synthesis response, which tends to go on a bell curve. Like you eat a meal, you get a muscle protein synthesis kind of curve, lasts 3 to 4 hours, and so classic bodybuilders, that's why they would eat 3, 4, 5 meals a day to maximize kind of that positive nitrogen balance for this muscle protein synthesis. So I would say more meals tends to be better than fewer, but to the degree I wouldn't expect huge, that's not the thing that's really holding most people back from building muscle. So it's kind of like majoring in the minors a little bit, but that's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, I talked to Don Lehman, who's done a lot of the research, some of the similar work on this, and basically at about 2 meals you kind of maximize. Third meal is going to give you a minor amount. It's like Kevin said, it's a really minimal difference, and really the biggest, once you get the required amount of protein, and some people will talk anywhere around 1.6 grams per kilo or 2.2 grams per kilo or as much as 2.6 grams per kilo, somewhere in that range. It might even be higher without carbs, so we don't have great data on that. I asked him about, what about eating a big steak? And he said there's really literally no data on that. Almost all the data on these protein requirements are done on, protein isolate supplements, whey protein powders and whatnot. And so, like I mentioned earlier with the digestion, when we eat a big steak, we're constantly dumping amino acids into our bloodstream for, 6, 8, 10 hours postprandially. So we don't really have good context on that. And so I found, Kevin's put on 20 pounds. I put on 20 pounds in the last year and a half. Same thing, just eating enough food and training. The biggest thing, honestly, is the training. The biggest discriminator. If you get the adequate amount of protein, whatever that is, then it's going to be training consistency and training intensity. And worrying about whether I had 3 meals or 4 meals is really of minimal impact. The training aspect is going to be the most important driver there.
But I heard you can just eat meat and sit on your butt and not do anything, and then gurus in the carnivore world tell me I can gain muscle doing that. No?
Well, you can gain a little bit of muscle. I mean, there will be people that body recomposite. You're not going to get Mr. Olympia, though. I mean, you might notice I'm a little bit leaner without any significant exercise. Even Stu Phillips has confirmed that that's a possibility. But to think you're going to turn into Superman by sitting on your butt and eating steaks is just not right.
Lift weights.
Thank you.
Eat steak.
Hi. As a newbie, the question I get the most is you can't live without fiber, vitamins, and minerals from the vegetables. Can you just educate me a tiny bit?
Well, there's no essential vitamin and mineral that's in a plant that you won't get in meat. So that's probably the big one there. Regarding fiber, we touched on it a little bit. It can potentially have a net negative impact for a lot of people. I mean, I haven't had fiber in years and still kicking right now. So it seems to be a non-essential nutrient, which so.
So don't believe it, it's a lie that you need.
It's a lie, yes.
Yeah.
All right, I have not eaten a speck of fiber, fruit, or vegetable in over 14 years. What am I missing?
Fiber fuels fermentation in the gut, which makes alcohol. It's deadly. So it's the cause of significant disease, but in the modern medical world, we don't recognize it or see it. If you look at the original study on fiber, it was just someone's opinion, and we took it from there. It's not good for us.
So we don't really need to supplement
Supplement.
at all?
Eat
Vitamin,
meat.
multivitamin,
It's all
vitamin
in
D.
meat. Plants actually chelate, and they cause leaky gut, and they cause our need to take supplements, and I don't think we've ever shown that supplements help us at all.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I would just posit to you, so if you think this particular plant is essential, and then if we look at in a historical context, I'm like, well, where does it grow? Does it grow all year round? Can you demonstrate? I mean, you can't point to a single fruit or vegetable that grows every part of the world where humans have occupied. And so it's like, where is that coming from? And then I think, that there's if the people that are pro-fiber will point to a wealth of data supporting fiber and association studies, but you ask, what is the comparator group? And it's usually in comparison to people eating a standard American garbage diet. And that's really the only slight benefit you might have by just not eating quite as much Oreo cookies because you're eating, a vegetable instead of that. But the reality is it's completely unessential. You don't need it. You can get everything you need from an animal-based diet. I mean, like all of us have more than proven that, over the years, and there's, just thousands and thousands of years of history of data, people doing that, and they've survived just fine without it.
And how you reply to that person? Thank you so much for your concern, but I feel amazing.
I'm just starting to go complete carnivore, but my question is for anybody that may be having adrenal failure or adrenal fatigue, what would be the best routes for them starting out?
High fat, because your adrenal hormones need cholesterol to synthesize. Your immune system, all your steroid hormones, so you need the cholesterol.
Okay, thank you.
I hope this isn't too far off topic, but it's something I wonder about a lot. Statins. The S word. I hear a lot of people saying they don't even know me, and it's like, get off of them, don't take them, don't take them. But a few doctors have said some people need statins. So is that true? If you know, do some people absolutely need statins? Yeah, that's my question, if you have any input. Oh, and sir, I didn't get your name. I came in a few minutes. Yes, I'm sorry, I don't know you, and I'm...
Dr. Rob Kiltz.
Okay, thank you.
Well, if you look at the sort of the people that are very pro-statin, I mean, I think the most compelling indication would be post-secondary prevention. So if you've had a heart attack and you are in a very vulnerable state, when you look at, like, there's a nice study out of the Denmark Heart Registry that came out this year, and it showed that people that had zero CAC scores, LDL cholesterol had no bearing on what's called MACE, or major adverse cardiac events. And so, as a female that is presumably not had a heart attack, you're probably requirement for that is lower than, say, a male that just had a heart attack. And so, it's I don't tell people to disregard LDL cholesterol. I think it's something that you have to get more information on, look at the overall risk profile for this. It turns out that probably diabetes, metabolic syndrome, which consists of not LDL cholesterol, if you look at what goes into metabolic syndrome, probably has a larger impact on cardiovascular risk. Again, if you're not staring down the barrel of the gun, you walk into the doctor's office and your LDL cholesterol is 350 or something extremely high, it's hard to really put yourself in that position and say, well, I do this or that, when you've never been there. And so I get that. I get that, concern when you have a doctor telling you, oh my God, you're going to have a heart attack next week. So I think it really, it's up to you to make that decision. It's a personal decision between you and your physician. You take as much information. What I would typically do is say, can I have more information? Can we assess more things? Because unfortunately, the way medicine is practiced in this country, it's basically just purely reflexive. There's no nuance behind it. I would say the vast majority of the U.S. population, with 80% being metabolically unhealthy, having metabolic syndrome, being overweight, probably elevated LDL cholesterol in that population is probably a contributing and a dependent variable. And in those people, perhaps. But I think if you're taking the steps as you should be to rectify all these other metabolic conditions, then it's questionable whether it's beneficial or not. And if you look at guys like David Diamond, they'll talk about numbers needed to treat, and you need to give thousands of people statins to avoid a heart attack. So I think the benefits are overstated. The risks are typically ignored in a lot of cases. There's a lot of people that do very poorly on them. And so again, I'm not here to tell you they're poison, but I think I think most physicians under-inform consent people about the potential risk and don't really get into the nuance behind that.
Can I say, okay, I've had many patients come to me who have had frighteningly high levels of total cholesterol and LDL, 700, something like that. So, and these women are hypothyroid. One of the older diagnostic tools for diagnosing hypothyroidism was how high your cholesterol was. So in many cases, if a woman has very high LDL and very high triglycerides and very high cholesterol, it may be due to hypothyroidism.
But ultimately, it's inflammation, and it's not the cholesterol. So we're forgetting the doctor-recommended diet, and we're trained to diagnose a disease and give a drug. And so that seems to be our quick fix. But what we're learning here today is that what we've been sharing has been wrong for a long time. So statins also cause other diseases, including diabetes, by the way, which leads to another drug. So once again, we go right back to the simple story that carnivore cures, and that is the answer. And I know it's kind of crazy and it seems wrong, but it's fatty meat, by the way, not lean meat. It's fatty meat, and I think statins are just another list of the thousands of drugs that we simply write a prescription for because it's easier to do that. And don't forget to eat your vegetables, fruits, fiber, seeds, nuts, and your lean meat.
Dr. Phil Avadia is a heart surgeon, and he has a book called How to Stay Off of My Operating Table, and it talks a lot about that. And he quotes the statistic, that 1 in 100 people that are prescribed a statin actually need it. And so I would encourage you to read that book and check out some of his information for a lot more nuance and information about it.
Dr. Phil
Ovadia.
Ovadia. Thank you.
I think we have time for 2 more quick questions.
I'll make mine quick, but it's interesting. I'm a physician, retired physician, and that she asked that question because when I went down this journey 3.5 years ago, you know, as physicians, you guys already all know this, but we don't get trained in this with this knowledge, right? So there's no intention to do harm or to do the wrong thing, and then it seems like we get so busy in our practice that we just don't learn this stuff, right? So the way it relates to her point is that as a physician on a statin, I was scared to get off of it. However, because we have, you know, a knowledge base, once I looked at the biochemistry and looked at the lectures, you know, even though I had a fatty plaque in my Widowmaker region from 2008 with a coronary CTA, I still decided to get off the statin. I've been off of it for 3 or so years. And you know, now that I'm carnivore predominantly, I think that I'm fairly safe. But it's just, you know, as a patient without the knowledge base, of course it's scary, but it's also scary even as a physician with the knowledge base. So a couple of comments for the panel. Number one, as a physician, thank you for all you do, because the amount of people you help indirectly with your content is just incredible. And you guys probably forget this because you're busy doing the work, but it's amazing what you guys are doing. Not just anti-heart attack and stuff, but also anti-cancer, because the diet obviously is an anti-cancer diet. And then the second comment to the panel is, we look at pictures of people in the United States just doing normal stuff, and they don't look healthy. And look at our panel. This is exactly what people are supposed to look like, so that's really cool. Now, to my question really quickly, because as you know, I'm retired, so all I do is just nutritional-based research most of my day, just for my own learning. But there's a couple of rabbit holes we all go down, and one of them is the microbiome, and I won't touch that because you guys already did. I just wanted some general comments on that. But my question is dairy. Now, completely avoid like sugar, limit, or don't worry about it. Because it's a bit of a rabbit hole for me. The only real dairy I consume right now is butter. But I'd like to know just maybe a couple of comments from the panel, just bullet point, yes, no, and why.
It's not actually a super simple yes, no, why, because I
Thank you.
actually do think
I don't feel so dumb, yeah.
I think there is a good amount of nuance, because when you just say dairy, you have raw versus pasteurized. You have A2, A1. You have just the fat, or you have the proteins and the sugars, the lactose and the whey and the casein. And so many people can do just fine with butter, like you're saying, because it doesn't have the sugars and the proteins, where people that do have problems with it a lot, that's frequently the issues. I would say the short answer is most people are probably doing best limiting or eliminating dairy. Now, for the first time in my kind of carnivore journey, I started adding dairy to my diet in the form of raw milk about 9 months ago. This has been on my muscle building journey, an easy way to get some more energy in. And I was shocked that I tolerated it very easily, because I've never consumed much milk in my life. But I'm doing raw A2 from a local farm.
The way it's supposed to be, right?
Yeah, I guess from the way it's supposed to be. And I'm also white, obviously, European ancestry, which tends to, I think there is an ancestral component to this. Many people of, like, notably Asian descent can't do any lactose. So there is a little bit of nuance there, I think, from a hereditary standpoint as well.
I think people have very big differences in how they react to dairy. In general, dairy can be inflammatory. Dairy has casomorphines that can be addictive. And for someone like me, I cannot have a ball of fresh mozzarella in front of me without going through the whole dang thing. But I will say this too, for myself, way back, coming to carnivore and thinking, oh my God, this is really crazy, but let's jump in and do it. I don't think I could have transitioned without having cheese and the recipes that I've been able to make with cheese. So it's an evolving journey, but ultimately, I really do feel we would be better off without dairy. I think we're the only creatures walking among Earth that eat the milk of, or eat a product of the milk of another animal. So, yeah, I think it has to be individual.
Well, us and kittens, right?
Blood and milk. Humans have been consuming that for thousands of years, but I think each person's a little different. I do some cream and butter. And a little bit of cheese, and I think in the carnivore conversion, it helps a little bit. I even do some ice cream with cane sugar from time to time, and
Exercise that pancreas.
Well, remember, insulin is stimulated with amino acids, okay? So there's a lot of damage from that also. But again, from time to time, but all the time is deadly, in my opinion. So if some of us are more capable of minimization, others can't do it. So you got to find your place in all of this.
But I thought plants were silently killing us.
Yes, they are. But remember, from time to time is okay.
There's
Is
something.
that like a little bit of cyanide?
Hormesis.
There's something called the delusion of perfection, right, Dr.
All right, very quickly, we have time for one last question. Briefly, please.
So what if you did a carnivore diet, but you juiced your vegetables? Does that eliminate the toxins, and does it interfere with the the absorption of the meat that you're eating? And just certain vegetables, not all vegetables that have sugar, but if you juiced it.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to concentrate them. I mean, there's people that actually, in a serious note, there's people that have developed renal failure from, oxalate-induced spinach smoothies. I mean, that's on the record. So, yeah, I mean, you're just going to concentrate, these anti-nutrients, and if you're chasing your steak with a spinach smoothie, I mean, I question your culinary taste in the first place. No
smoothies. I'm just talking just strictly just juice the vegetables. No smoothie.
Yeah, I see very little benefit in doing that, and probably detriment more than anything. So I don't recommend juice smoothies of any type, whether it's fruit or vegetable.
Okay.
Deadly.
Okay.
Just one last note on that. I do think if someone is eating plants, there's certain plants that you can process, like a potato, for example. If you're going to eat a potato, skin it, cook the heck out of it, because you can reduce the plant toxin load. So there's a devil's advocate argument.
Ribeye, juiced vegetable.
Well,
But that French fry from time to time.
The only reason I ask is because, you hear Jack LaLanne, the godfather of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Helio Gracie, they all juice their vegetables. Just curious, that's all.
Can you all stand for a photo so we can get a shot of these healthy people together?
Well, Stan, thank you so much to the panelists. Thank you to all for your questions.